when it comes to Bigfoot, you hear so many variations of who they are, what they are, where they came from, how long they've been here. I can't help but think they're part human, and I think they've been here from the beginning of time. I really believe they are just another group of people that have now lived in the wilderness for so long, and they've just adapted to their surroundings. It's fascinating to hear everybody's different opinions on the subject and trying to formulate exactly what they are. And I always picture myself just sitting down on the ground with my head bowed down, as if I'm just telling them I'm safe, I'm here, and I want to see you, and I want one to talk to me.
This is Bigfoot Crossroads. My name is Matt, and joining me is Jodi. Jodi was actually called to my attention by a mutual friend, Evans Bailey, because he thought I might be interested in your story.
Yes.
Yeah, so crazy stuff. But first, you're a Bigfooter?
I am. I am part of the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization based out of Southeast Oklahoma. I've been with them, I'm guessing about 6 years. I kind of feel like I'm the low man on the totem pole sometimes. I don't get to get out as much as the rest of the members do. But I try to do my part, and I really enjoy getting out there and investigating.
How in the world did you get interested in Bigfoot stuff?
Well, I guess it goes back quite some time ago. My son-in-law years ago told me about his cousin's husband seeing a Bigfoot in Missouri. And I thought that was really cool. And so I just kind of would look at some things every once in a while on the internet, and it popped up about the conference down in Honolulu. And so I asked my husband, hey, let's go down there. Well, he wasn't able to go with me. He had business to do. And so I went down by myself. And I met Mordecai during that trip. He was the one that teaches everybody about how to cast Bigfoot prints. And he was the one that told me about them. What is the word I'm looking for? Where they take you on expeditions. Mm-hmm. And so I got to meet Troy and Evans and some of the others, and I didn't know it at the time, but that was kind of like my interview with them, to decide if they thought I was worthy enough to become an investigator with their group. And they decided that I was. And so it just kind of took off from there.
Now, have you had any experiences that you consider were Bigfoot related?
I personally have not seen one. I have heard what I thought might be a Bigfoot. I've obviously seen the prints and the tree breaks and just the different things that you look for when you're out in the woods. These guys are very good at what they do, so they've taught me a lot. I've seen what I thought might be a Bigfoot on a FLIR, but I have not seen one with my naked eye. But that does not keep me from getting out there because I truly believe in them. There's too much evidence out there not to. There's just too many people that report. And so for it not to be real or true just seems ridiculous.
Have you heard stories of sightings around your area where you live at?
Quite a few, actually, yes. Our group came up here to Spavinaw, I believe 2 years ago. We camped in the local campground, and then we did a couple of nighttime investigations over the weekend. We didn't come up with any evidence, but we were able to interview several people during that weekend from the area that had stories. I believe there's a YouTube video out there about that. But yes, I do get lots of reports. It's actually kind of funny. I'm the manager of a vintage antique store in Pryor, Oklahoma, and I actually have people coming in there looking for me to tell me about their stories. So that's pretty neat.
Oh, wow.
I just take time out of my day and just get the information that I can, and we kind of go from there.
We've talked a little bit, not very much, but I told you that my family had property very close to where you live.
Correct.
I've told this story a few times, but probably my first memory of Bigfoot as a kid, I had a dream about a Bigfoot, actually, while I was staying at that lake property. I was very young.
Interesting.
And I got my first book on the subject, which was a little paperback book. And half of the book was about Bigfoot and half was about the Loch Ness Monster. And it just had, classic stories of sightings and encounters.
Right.
And I got it at an estate sale in that area.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But back then, even though I was, getting interested in the subject and stuff, I wasn't thinking about it a whole lot. So I really never looked for it or thought that there was Bigfoot around there or anything. I didn't even think Bigfoot was a thing in Oklahoma until much later in my life.
Sure.
And I have the internet to thank for that.
Right.
But after I did make that discovery that they're everywhere and I started going out with groups and looking for them and everything, I found myself back in that area, just kind of scouting around. I had ran across a report somewhere about some, I think it was a father and son that saw one, I want to say, on the Pryor Creek hiking trails, if you know where that's at.
I do know where that's at. Yes.
Yeah. So I went and checked that out, me and my research partner at the time. Found some interesting tree bows where they were actually pinned by other debris and stuff to the ground. They weren't just growing naturally.
And this place you're talking about is on the outskirts of town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like right there.
Yeah. I had never, it wasn't like I didn't spend a lot of time in Pryor. We would, run into town, and go eat or go to Walmart or something. But I didn't know about those hiking trails until that day. And I was just kind of like, wow, this is right here,
Yes. Yep.
And then we ended up going to some other areas. I had heard about another sighting that took place, which was right by our lake house. I mean, within a mile.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we found a track, and it was in a puddle, a perfect track, and it kind of blew my mind. And then we drove around a little bit further and kind of went off this road that came off the highway over there that runs to Adair.
Sure.
We found an area where there was just all kinds of crazy tree structures. There was trees that were like leaned up in the forks of other trees, but the root ball was in the air instead of on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was kind of mind blowing to think that I grew up there running around as a little kid. I mean, my favorite pastime was to go off into the woods by myself for the whole day, And
yes.
It's just kind of crazy to think that these things really are just everywhere.
Well, and see, I originally grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I moved to Missouri. I believe I was 22 years old. And so I was there for about 28 years. And I used to go hiking all the time in Arkansas and Missouri. And I think back on that, this is pre-Bigfoot. And I think, how many times were they watching me?
Yeah.
Or how many times did I walk by them and have no idea that they were there?
Yeah. And I think that happens to everybody.
Yes.
And I talk about that quite a bit too. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept, after people have sightings, that Bigfoot hindsight, where once you know that they're out there, then you start thinking about, well, there was that one time I heard this one thing.
Yes.
And you start coming up with all these possibilities. But yeah, I think a lot of people encounter these things and just don't even realize it. They just write it off as, oh, well, it must have been a deer or a bear or something like that, because why would it be a Bigfoot?
Right. Well, my husband kind of thinks I'm crazy. He doesn't get into it much, but he totally supports everything I do. And it was probably about 3 years ago. He was standing on our deck, and we live right on the lake between Spavinaw and Salina. And it was about 2:00 in the morning, and he said he heard something howl, and he said, I've been a hunter. I know what animals make what sounds. And he said this was loud and deep and far away, and he said that convinced him that he probably heard a Bigfoot. Doesn't mean he wants to go out and research with me. He has no desire to do that. He, like I said, he thinks I'm crazy. The big joke in the family is if I die from a Bigfoot, he is going to go out on the road and make money from my death, telling my story.
I mean, that area you're in, though, between Spavinaw and Salina and going, back along the lake there.
Yes.
I mean, that's prime territory. That's the perfect
Yes.
habitat for these things.
Well, and right down the road, I say right down the road, about 8 miles or so, is the intersection that leads off to Kenwood. And Kenwood is a Cherokee community. And I've heard many, many stories from there, but I'm not allowed to go out there. They don't want a non-Native American to come out there and investigate. So I can't ever get out there, but I hear a lot of stories about that area.
We're here to talk about something else, though.
Yes, we are.
Me and you have something in common.
I know. I'm curious. Are you going to tell me your story?
Yeah, we're going to have a little show and tell session.
Okay.
You tell me your story and then I'll tell you mine. But yeah, just
Okay.
the drill. Walk us through that day, what you were doing, what happened, and all that good stuff.
Okay. It was June 29th of this year. It was 7:15 in the morning. On top of being the manager of a store, I also do eBay. So every morning before work and on the weekends, I am running out the door trying to find my next bargain. So I had left the house about a mile down the road. The road is kind of curvy. It leads up to a very, very large salvage yard. But going up these curves, I'm always used to seeing wildlife, especially the deer. And so I pay close attention as I'm going up that road, especially early in the morning. But I came around one of those corners, and off to my right, in the grass on the side of the road, I saw a flash of brown. So my first instinct was a fawn, because just a couple of days before that, I had seen a fawn in almost the exact same spot come out onto the road. So I started slowing down my car. And when it stepped out on the road, my mind was having a battle because I kept saying it was a deer, but what stepped out on the road was on 2 legs. And so my focus was on the lower half of the body. And I watched this little creature run across the highway. It was no more than 2 foot tall. I cannot tell you what it looked like from the shoulders up because I was so focused on the lower half of the body because I kept arguing in my mind, is that really what I'm seeing or is it a little animal? But it clearly was not. It was on 2 legs. It was dressed in like a tunic type outfit, all one piece. Originally, I said that the top was like a tank top, but the more I thought about it, it almost had like a little cap on the sleeve. It didn't come down the arm at all. It just kind of capped at the shoulder. When it ran across the road, they run just like we do. The arms pumping just as if you saw a human run across the road. The arms reminded me of a dwarf. And the reason I say that is from the elbow to the wrist seemed short. compared to a human's arm. And the hands seemed a little bit larger than they should have been. People kept asking me about the feet. The feet were very normal to me. They were very proportional to the body size. The creature was a little bit on the chunky side, and when I say that, I don't mean fat. It just was very well defined. It wasn't skinny, but it moved very quickly. Now, of course, when I got interviewed by Brian from Red Dirt Cryptids, I said it probably took 4 to 5 seconds to cross the road, but in all reality, everybody's telling me it probably just took a second or two. It just seemed longer, but it did run very, very quickly. And I slammed on my brakes because I knew no one was behind me, and I threw my car in park, and I jumped out of the car. My car door was open. Here I am on this curvy road, but I had to see if I could see it run through the woods on the opposite side of the road. I did not have my phone with me. I didn't think that quickly. I just wanted to see it better. When I got to the side of the road, I didn't see it anywhere. But as Brian would tell you, the woods are extremely thick right there, and it kind of drops down into a ravine, and I didn't see anything moving. But as small as it was, it could have been 5 feet away from me laying in the brush, and I wouldn't have known it. I jumped back in my car because that road's pretty busy in the morning, and I had left my car right in the middle of the road, basically. And I got my car, and my mind was racing. Who do I call first? 7:50 in the morning. All of my groups probably sound asleep. Who do I call? So I called my husband. And when I was telling him about it, I was continuing to drive down the road. For about 10 minutes, my body felt like it was electrically charged. It was this weird energy just running through me, and I felt like I wanted to cry. I mean, I was really fighting that because what I told my husband, I would have rather have seen a 10-foot tall Bigfoot than to see what I saw, because I had always thought of the little people as folklore. I honestly didn't believe in them. And so to see that in front of me was just mind-blowing, really. I just don't know. I know the Cherokees in this area believe in them. In fact, I have several people that actually want to get together with me and talk to me about that. Apparently, they're concerned because I saw one. From what they say, the way they put it, a little white girl like you shouldn't be seeing a little person. And yeah, so they're kind of concerned about that. So I have some other people I need to talk to. But I got to work that day, and of course I told some of my coworkers, and the gentleman from the store 2 doors down came over to tell us about a potential ghost that he had seen on the cameras in his store, and he had seen it several times. And so my coworker said, "Well, tell your story." So I started to tell him, and when I did, he proceeded to tell me about how he and his wife have seen them before.
Oh, wow.
So we've gotten into this discussion. Well, this customer comes up from the back of the store, and she kind of she threw her hands down on the counter where the register is at, and she said, "You should have never gotten out of your car." And I just kind of looked at her funny, and she said, "I'm really sorry. I know I was eavesdropping, but you should have never gotten out of your car." And I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "Because that comes across to them as confrontational." And she said, "When you do that, that's when bad things happen." And she said, "They can steal your soul, steal your memory, go after your grandchildren, that kind of thing." So that kind of concerned me a little bit, took me back for a second, because I didn't realize that they consider these creatures mean, I guess, for lack of a better word. They're mischievous and just cause harm. So yeah, she was pretty concerned, which then put me a little bit on alert, I guess.
Sure.
I didn't know quite to think. And she was Cherokee. She didn't give me her name or anything, but you could tell she was greatly disturbed by what I was saying. But my coworker has a housekeeper and her housekeeper's husband. They're both Cherokee. And he had a story from when he was a little boy. He claims he was taken when he was 5 years old and kept for 2 days. So he and his wife want to talk to me. And then I had an older couple come in one day at work. I wasn't there. They want to talk to me. They're both Cherokee. So yeah, the word has kind of gotten out a little bit. And Brian's video was taken off like wildfire. It's a subject that people, I guess, really didn't think about. But now that it's kind of been put out in the open through my video, I'm getting a lot of response about that.
Well, whenever it comes to that sort of thing, a lot of Native Americans don't talk about it. They believe it's taboo to speak on.
Right.
So there's a lot of interest, anytime you've got secret knowledge of something, it piques people's curiosity and they want to know more about it, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah.
I do too.
So a situation like this, where someone like yourself, who's not Native and has,
Correct.
No heritage-based ties to not talking about it or anything.
Right.
You're willing to speak about it openly. And, we hope nothing bad happens from it.
Agreed.
Have you noticed anything? Does it seem like you've got any sort of bad luck? I have
not.
Okay.
No, I have not. But Troy Hudson, that is one of the leaders of our group, he has told me to just be aware and watch what's going on around me, anything unusual. And I haven't yet. Sometimes when I go to bed at night, I think to myself, man, I hope tonight when I go to bed, the memories of what the face or hair looked like would come to mind, but it doesn't. And I don't want to make anything up. I don't want to push myself to make up something that I can't remember.
Right.
So I have had somebody mention that I should have an artist draw from my memory, so I might have that done. Anyway, yeah, it's very interesting.
Nothing unusual disappearing at your home, like silverware or anything like that?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet.
Just checking.
No, I know. I have had. They've brought all those subjects up, but they think, or some of them think, that because I can't remember from the shoulders up, that it stole my memory of that because it doesn't want me to remember what it looked like.
Huh.
So I suppose that's a possibility. I had somebody mention to me that maybe I should get hypnosis. Well, I had somebody with a Cherokee background tell me absolutely not. Do not do that, because it's like opening up a door for them to mess with my mind, I guess I want to say, my memories and things like that. They think I should not do that.
Kind of like picking at the scab.
Sure. I need to just leave it alone and let things be. And I was very lucky to see what I did, but I just need to let it go. And I'm like, okay.
It's hard to just let it go. Whenever you witness something like that. And I mean, like, spoiler alert, I did listen to the majority of your interview with Brian. So okay. I know some of the answers ahead of time, which is not my normal thing, but just for the sake of the listener, the tunic that it was wearing, was it cinched at the waist or just free flowing?
It was free flowing. And when I say that, because I've been asked multiple questions, when I say free flowing, I don't mean something like silk or satin, not that free flowing,
Right.
but it just moved very well with the body when it was running. And so I had somebody ask me, was it fur? Was it skins? As quickly as I saw it, if I had to pick a type of fabric, I would say a skin. Somebody asked me if maybe it was like grasses woven together. No, that would have been too rough. It wouldn't have flowed with the body when it ran.
And color of skin?
So the term that I used, because I was trying to figure out how I wanted to say that, almost like a saddle brown, like somebody that has works out in the sun on a farm. And then the tunic was just a little bit of a lighter color. Somebody else asked me if it was covered in hair, some people claim maybe I saw a baby Bigfoot. No, it had skin just like we did. I don't remember hair. If there was, it was very light. It didn't stand out. It was barefoot. No type of shoes. I didn't hear anything.
Did you notice anything about the posture whenever it was running? Was it like straight backed or hunched over?
I wouldn't say hunched over, but it was moving quickly. So like leaning forward, maybe at a slant, but I wouldn't say hunched over. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Other than the size, pretty normal for what you would imagine like a human moving.
Yes. When my daughters were asking me about it, I said it was kind of like looking at a gnome, a garden gnome. You always joke and talk about little people, but that's kind of how it was. And when Brian did the interview with me in his video, they stood on the side of the road with a yardstick, and I recreated driving past that spot to make sure, because I immediately said it was about 2 foot. And sure enough, it was. When I drove by and looked at the yardstick, he had colored dots on the yardstick. And so I picked the colored dot where I thought it was the height. And sure enough, it was 2 foot tall.
Mind blown.
And when we did the interview with Brian and we were looking over that side of the ravine, all right, let me back up for a minute. So that road is called Indian Springs Road. And so when we looked over the side of that ravine, sure enough, my husband saw some water coming out of an area to the right of where we were looking. So I imagine there's springs all over that area, and that's why the road was given that name.
There are. I can confirm that from my own snooping around. I found some amazing places off in that area.
Really?
Yeah. Places that were just kind of mind-blowing that I had no idea were even there. Springs and spring-fed creeks and just beautiful areas. And
right.
There was some rural people too. I got a little nervous. I was going down one road that was a single lane road that kind of cut down into a ravine. And once I got to the bottom of it, I realized it was somebody's driveway.
Yes.
Yes. So that's not a good situation to be in.
No.
All the questions that come to mind, I know you don't have answers to, why did this thing run across the road in front of you?
That was something else we talked about. So, but I always ask the same question with deer. When a car is driving down the road, can these animals, little people, whoever, can they not feel the vibration in the road from the car? That was one of my questions. And if they can, why don't they go back into the woods?
Yeah.
So, I had somebody say, well, maybe he wanted you to see him. Well, why?
That's more disturbing.
Yes. Why? And somebody said, well, you drive that road 5 days a week. So maybe they've seen you before. Somebody suggested because I'm in the Bigfoot world, they all kind of interconnect together and they knew that somehow. I don't know if I believe all that, but when I first saw it, it was in the grass, so it could have easily turned around and been back into the woods without me seeing it. So why did it run across the road?
So whenever you first saw it, and is it standing still or is it already moving?
No, it was standing still.
Wow.
But because we are very, very heavily wooded in this area. So, everything is bright green right now. So the brown stood out to me as I came around that corner. But I'm always on the lookout for deer, always, because they're always running out in front of my car. So as soon as I saw that brown in the grass, I immediately started slowing down. And I don't know if I startled it. I don't know if there were more on the other side of the road and it just was in a panic to get with the rest. I just don't know.
Have you gone back to that area? I know you went back to compare size and everything, but have you gone back since and done a little hiking to see if there's anything off in those woods?
Well, I have not, simply because it's private land on both sides. And to the right of the road, there is actually a neighborhood back up in there. But on both sides of the roads, it dips down into ravines. And on the right side, if it rains really well, it floods. And then the left side would be a little bit hard to get down into. But I'm a worrier. I don't like to trespass on people's property.
Right.
So I just am, especially out here in the country. You don't know who's going to come out after you. So no, I have not. I would like to get down that ravine, but this time of the year, I don't. Snakes, mosquitoes, all that yucky stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get down in there. It is so overgrown. I mean, Brian is from Enid, and so they're used to the flat land of Oklahoma and, not a whole lot of trees. And he comes out here and he's like, whoa. He's like, dinosaurs could live out here and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's very heavily wooded. And we've had bear. I've had a bear in my backyard 3 different times in the last month.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, like close. He was on my back deck, like 8 feet away from me.
I mean, bears were just like absolutely unheard of whenever I was up there.
Well, they're all over now.
I had heard that there's more bear in that area now.
Yes. That's what the game warden said. But we have mountain lions. We have it all.
There was just a picture of one I saw recently from Salina of a mountain lion that somebody's security camera caught.
Yeah, they're here. So, and this is just my own opinion, but I've brought it up with everybody else. All these wildlife management areas, why are there so many and why are they placed where they're at? Like ours is very close to Kenwood and the Cherokee population over there. I mean, is there a reason for that? I would love to get back in there. We keep saying we're going to do it as a group, but to try to get us all together and get out there in these wildlife management areas is sometimes hard to do. But I often wonder, why do they put these in strategic places, it seems like?
Yeah, why is it in one location and not a different one? How did they choose the specific areas?
Right.
Going back to the possibility of little people and Bigfoot somehow being intertwined, have you had other experiences, maybe paranormal experiences or anything?
Well, totally off the wall. Yes, I have. This was way back when I was 19 years old and I was living on the Cape in Massachusetts. It would have been the late 80s. So 19, it would have been 88. Back then, hotel parties were pretty popular. You rent a hotel party, you all get in the room and you drink, and we'd play poker and just crazy, stupid teenager stuff. It was pretty bad, but I was I had grown up in a Christian home, and so the whole drinking scene just wasn't much for me. So I was always the designated driver. And so they're all partying, doing their thing, playing poker. I'm sitting over in the corner in a chair, just kind of observing everyone. I was kind of the shy one of the bunch anyway. But there was a young girl. I say young girl, teenager. I don't mean young. She was sitting on the bed, leaning up against the headboard, and there was a young man. His name was Billy. He kind of dressed almost goth-like, but not to that extreme. What I mean by that is he had long black hair. He wore the black clothes. Just kind of, if he was out in public, some people might be scared of him. They were on the bed talking to each other. And all of a sudden, I heard her scream. And when I looked up, he was on all fours in front of her on the bed, growling at her. And when he turned his head to look at me, he was a wolf. He had, in my eyes, what I was seeing, he was a wolf on all fours. He was drooling from the jowls, had the pointed ear, just like a wolf, like what you would see in the movies. And she is just screaming. Well, when he turned to look at me, and I'm assuming he looked at me because I was the only Christian in the room, he ran out of the hotel room, out the front door. Well, at this point, everybody's screaming. Nobody knows what's going on. She runs off to the bathroom. Her boyfriend runs in there with her. And I'm just in a full-blown panic. I just want my boyfriend, take me home. Just get me out of here, take me home. Well, she screams again in the bathroom. And the bathroom door comes flying open. And this wolf comes running through the bathroom door, back through the hotel room, back out the front door. Well, everybody's freaking out again. Some of them run into the bathroom to make sure they're okay. And back then, and even now, in this hotel room, up at the ceiling was one of those very long rectangular windows, that were only, 5 inches tall, 6 inches tall maybe. They claimed, now this window was still whole, the glass wasn't broken out of it. They claimed he came flying through that window at her and knocked her boyfriend down. And that's when he went out the bathroom door and out the front door. So everybody goes running around outside the back of the hotel room to see, well, first of all, common sense told us it couldn't have come through that window. But we were also wondering, if it did come through that window, how did it come through that window? Out back, there was no air conditioner units, nothing leaned up against the building to even let something climb up to that window. So I'm really panicking now, telling my boyfriend, now, we need to leave now. So he gets me in the car, and he told me I was screaming the whole entire time. He gets me in the car, and I got down on the floorboard and crawled up underneath the glove compartment. And he said I stayed like that the entire way home. When he got me home, I'm still screaming, and I'm screaming, get him away from me, get him away from me. And he's like, there's nobody here. He takes me in the house, he puts me in the bedroom. I immediately go over to the corner of the room, and I curled up in a ball. The entire time I'm screaming, get him away from me, get him away from me. Well, obviously there was nobody there. So he calls my mom, and he's like, I don't know what to do. She's panicking, and she's screaming about somebody being near her, and she wants me to get him away. So he holds the phone up to my ear, and my mom just started praying. And I don't know how long she prayed for. It was quite a while. But she prayed until I finally calmed down, and I didn't feel like he was near me. But I felt like his presence was stuck to me.
Still with you.
Yes. And then 3 months after that happened, at a local animal park, not a very big one, just kind of a little local thing, he was found, this young kid, Billy, was found in this animal park early morning hours. He had skinned a goat alive and was eating it.
Yeah. And I mean, so how many witnesses to this?
Oh, if I had to guesstimate, I'd say there were probably 10 to 12 people in that hotel room. Nobody saw a wolf. Only I did.
Wow.
And the only thing, I mean, I've talked to a lot of church people about it, and the only thing they can say is obviously he had an evil spirit, and because I was a Christian, that's why I saw what I did, and nobody else saw it. I don't know. But when I run into people and they say, oh, I don't believe in demons and all these kind of things, I'm like, oh, you have no idea what is out there. Just let me tell you.
Did you ever talk to the girl about it? Did she see a wolf, or why did she initially scream? Was she just frightened?
Yeah, because they had started to argue and he got in her face. And at the moment, I guess when he got in her face is when I heard her scream. And that's when I heard the growl. That's what her screaming and the growl made me look up. And when I looked up, that's when he turned and looked right at me. And he was drooling. I mean, it was gross.
And then whenever the bathroom incident happened and the wolf came running out, did other people see him, or did they not see anything?
They said they saw him. Nobody saw the wolf.
Right, except you.
It was just me. Yep.
Yeah, that's frightening.
Yeah, I've told it many times to young kids, young teenagers that kind of get off on the wrong path, and they're just getting into evil things. And I'm like, you guys don't realize what's out there. And I think it's all around us, everywhere.
Well, especially in the late 80s, the time period that you're talking about,
Right.
Satan worship and Satanism was spreading rapidly. It was on the news, yes. and it was teenagers that were being drawn to it.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny that you said that, because in that same area, we had nobody I knew, but it was on the news. There was a young girl that had come out of her house to go to school one day, and the head of her horse was laying on her front steps.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out it was a satanic cult that had done that. So, yeah, it was huge in our area.
Well, I guess I should share my story now.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so mine's a pretty strange one. I had just moved out of my house for the first time. I was 19, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was raised by my great grandparents, actually.
Oh, okay.
But my mother was still around, and I talked to her and everything. So whenever I moved out, she actually rented a house, but she wasn't staying there. She had a boyfriend that she was staying with, so she allowed me to move into this house.
Okay.
And like a young idiot, I had a girlfriend at the time, so I'm like, hey, let's move in together in this house.
Yes.
Let's go play house together. And this house, it's kind of in the middle of Tulsa. It's real close to downtown. Wasn't a great area at the time.
Sure.
Had no business being there, but whatever. So we're moving into the house. I go and look at the house. It's like, we're checking it out before we move in and everything. And while we're there, this Native American woman, a little old lady, comes walking up to us while we're outside of the house. She actually lives in the house directly behind it. And the houses weren't very far apart. There was a chain link fence separating them, and there was a chain link gate right there that she just could access our property through. And so she comes over there and introduces herself and everything. And she says, I just want you to know that I smoked the house. I blessed it for you to get rid of all the evil stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you, like kind of weird.
And that didn't scare you?
So I guess I should add like a little footnote to this. I grew up in a house that had paranormal activity since I was born.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got sent down the path of investigating weird stuff. And, Bigfoot was just thrown in with all that stuff. So that's how I discovered Bigfoot. But yeah, so, I mean, my house was actually haunted, if that's what you want to call it, before I was ever born. Relatives experienced stuff. So like those stories, I've heard those too. And yeah, it's a whole thing. So to me, it was just kind of like, I hadn't moved in yet. I didn't know if it was haunted or not. She's just being nice, whatever. So she starts to walk off, and then she stops at the gate, and she turns back around, and she says, "There's also little people here." And I say, "Huh?"
In downtown Tulsa.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the hood. I'm in a bad neighborhood, but it's a neighborhood. It's like, this is not remote at all.
Right.
I can see, the buildings in downtown Tulsa from my yard. I'm that close to downtown. And so like, I'm like, okay, like I had heard about little people before, but I was like you.
Right.
Those are just stories. Those aren't, that's not Bigfoot. That's just a story.
Right.
And she's like, but don't worry, she says, I feed them or something. I'm like, okay. Like some of the things I've heard is that you don't do that, but I
was just getting ready to say that.
Yeah, but she's Native American. She's an old lady. I got to respect it. So I'm just like, okay, and I just blow it off. It immediately leaves my mind. There's no chance that there's little people here. I'm in the middle of the city. There's nothing here, yada, yada.
Right.
Shortly after moving in, I found out that the house was extremely haunted. And I mean, extremely. Oh my goodness. It was horrible. So eventually I found out that it was so bad that my mom had to ask the owners about it that we were renting from. And they told her what had happened. Their son used to live in the house, and he had a drug addiction and overdosed in the house. I assume that that's what was going on, that's where the spirit activity came from. Some of the things that happened, other than like, there was one instance where I was sitting in a chair in the corner. There's a floor lamp behind me. The lampshade's kind of above and behind my head in the corner.
Right.
I sit down in the chair. The lampshade behind my head rattles enough where I can like feel air coming off of it. And the only way I can describe it is it felt like somebody stood up and walked away from the chair. Ooh. Like they stood up where, like I sat on somebody, and it just, I don't know how to explain. I'm getting goosebumps right now.
I'm totally picturing it in my head.
That's just what it felt like. And then there was like a couple times where I thought, you see somebody standing off out of the corner of your eye in a different room, but there's nobody there, and you turn to look and there's nothing there.
Right.
But the big one that kept on happening, the house was set up kind of weird. You would come in the front door, and there's the living room. Off to the right is a bedroom. Straight through the living room is a dining room with an archway separating it. And off to the right of the dining room was another doorway. And there's like this little hallway area that connects the back bedroom, the dining room, the front bedroom, and the bathroom.
Okay.
So you can close all these doors, and it creates a little chamber.
Right.
That back bedroom, that door, we never used the back bedroom. I have my suspicions that might be the room where I think that was the room where it happened, because the carpet had been replaced in that room.
Okay.
But the door, the reason I know the carpet was replaced was because the door would stick to the carpet. It was hard to open and close, like physically hard. You had to put some elbow grease into it. And being young kids moving out for the first time, we didn't have a lot of furniture or anything. We only needed the one bedroom. We just never used that room for anything. So that door just stayed closed.
Sure.
And you would go into the bathroom and come out of the bathroom and the door would be open to that back bedroom. You would close the door, go to the living room. A little while later, go to the bathroom or something. That door would be open again.
Oh, I would have been out of there.
Or you would go into the bathroom, come out, and see the light had been turned on in the bedroom and the door was still closed. That was another one. The light kept on turning itself on. And you'd have to open the door, turn the light off, close the door. An hour later, go back to the bathroom, lights back on, switch has been flipped back up, the whole thing.
And this didn't make you guys run from the house.
I'm an idiot, okay? So then another big thing that happened that I remember was, so there was a little back porch area that had, an outside screen door, storm door, whatever you want to call it. And then the wooden door coming into the actual interior of the house.
Sure.
And it came into the kitchen, and next to the door was a washer and dryer for laundry. And that door would not stay closed either. It would open, and you could deadbolt it, and it would unlock itself and open. You could lock the storm door on the porch so nobody could access that door.
Right.
Lock the interior door, and it would unlock itself and open. And it kind of like,
oh no,
it didn't do like the real creepy creak, but it made noise whenever it opened.
Right.
So you'd be sitting in the living room watching TV and you would hear the door open. I had to literally slide the dryer in front of the door to keep it from happening.
Wow.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I wouldn't have stayed.
This house had some stuff going on. So one night, I was a smoker at the time.
Okay.
And I had gone out onto the front porch to smoke a cigarette. It had a wooden front porch with, the covered roof and everything. And
sure.
There was a single step going up to the porch. The porch was probably a foot off the ground at the most. It wasn't like a real tall porch or anything. And off to the side of the steps was a bush that went across the front of the porch. And then if I was sitting on the steps looking out towards the street. And so to my right is a small area where you can like walk between the houses. There's a fence over there and the neighbor's house. But if you're looking off the end of the porch, there's no bushes there or anything. It's just open.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette. It's late. It's dark. And something catches my eye, just some movement kind of in front of the bush. Like something was walking towards me and saw me and turned around and scurried off. I didn't see what it was. I just saw like a little flash of brown. And I thought, oh, is that a cat? That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
So I look towards the end of the porch, thinking that I'm going to see a cat run by.
Right.
And I see a little, about 2 foot tall man, covered in what looks to be homemade clothing of some kind. I would compare it to like buckskins.
Okay.
Long dark hair. And it just looked like a little human wearing like what I would consider primitive type clothing, just run past the end of my porch down between the houses.
Wow.
And I jump up and I look, I don't see anything. There's nothing between the houses. I wasn't going to follow it between the houses. I was 1,000% sure of what I saw. It was not a cat. It was not a dog. It was on 2 legs. It looked like a person. It was dark, so I couldn't make out a lot of details. I didn't have the porch light on or anything.
Right.
But there was light inside the house, so there was like ambient light coming through the windows enough that I could see, like
sure.
The clothing. It actually had sleeves. And I could see like a line separating like I think it was pants. I don't know that it was pants. I couldn't see that far down because part of it was like blocked by the porch.
Right.
But it was definitely on two legs, pumping its arms, just like you were talking about.
Right.
And just running, just scurrying off.
Wow.
And I mean, what else could it be? What else could it possibly be?
Right.
And it was shortly after that I did move out of that house. That was, that was just too much for me.
Was she the only Native American in the neighborhood?
I don't know. I do not know. Like I said, this was not a good neighborhood. This was a bad place to live. I did not, venture off my property at night.
Right.
The house that was on that side where it like ran between the two houses, that property was owned by a Hispanic family.
Okay.
And it was scary.
Wow.
I mean, there was a lot of people living there. I will not speculate on that, but there was a lot of people living there, and they had like some makeshift tents and stuff in the backyard. They had chickens. They had a goat. There's stuff going on there, and I just left them alone, left them to themselves, and they left me alone.
Now, see, they have a name for little people too. I'm not sure how they pronounce it, but it's spelled Duende, and that's their name for little people.
I mean, every culture does. Pretty much every culture has something, whether it be, the fae, fairies, gnomes, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has this thing, but it was just,
Wow.
I kind of went, I was shocked. By this point in time, me and the girl that I was living, she was no longer my girlfriend. She was no longer there. I ran inside and locked the door, and I'm just like, I just saw, like trying to process it, I know what I saw. And that's whenever it kind of kicked me in the butt that old woman had told me that there was little people there, and I didn't believe her. And I never.
Oh my goodness!
The one regret I have about the whole scenario is I didn't go back to the old lady and tell her about it or ask her about it. It was just, a life-changing moment. Yeah, it was just everything has changed now, and especially. I mean, I had Native friends growing up. I had Native friends whenever I was living in that house. And I had heard stories about stuff, but it's never in the middle of the city. That's not possible. I wasn't out on some property in the woods somewhere. I wasn't at a cabin or anything like that. I was in the middle of the city where it's supposed to be safe from these sort of things.
Well, it's funny that you say that because our group does a lot of investigating at Stinchcombe, which is right outside of Oklahoma, close to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And when you go out there and you think to yourself, how is this even possible? There are people everywhere, including people that hike in Stinchcombe, yet that's where they're seen. It's quite amazing.
Well, I talked to a buddy of mine, Yahola Tiger, who has a podcast called the War Cry Podcast. He's Native, originally from Tahlequah. And I told him about this story. I told him what had happened and everything. And he said that the belief is that they have their own travel routes and that they can go sort of in and out of our physical plane, and that might have just been part of a travel route that was there hundreds of years ago, and they just happened to build Tulsa here, and my house happened to be right there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting concept that I hadn't heard before.
Yes, I like that.
That gave me some sort of possible explanation,
Right. But there's a lot of people that believe that.
Yeah.
Of the different planes.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about that, but sometimes the more I hear these stories, I'm like, well,
I mean, you never know.
No.
I mean, I was just thinking about that earlier today, actually, about whenever it comes to some of the weird stuff, because you hear weird stories, whenever you start looking into Bigfoot.
Yes.
And I know the general consensus of no, bro.
Right.
You got to have your foundation of like, okay, well, we're looking for physical evidence. We're looking for footprints. We're looking for hair,
Correct.
We're approaching this where we let the evidence lead us.
Right.
We're not going to jump to they can turn invisible or anything like that unless we have evidence to support that and witness that. So, yeah.
Yep. That's it exactly.
But then as a Christian, think of all the things that we believe that are considered supernatural and paranormal.
Yes.
Why couldn't it happen? Why couldn't these other things take place? And so it creates quite a dynamic.
Well, especially when it comes to Bigfoot, because you hear so many variations of who they are, what they are, where they came from, how long they've been here. And just my personal opinion, this has nothing to do with my group. It's just kind of how I feel and think. I can't help but think they're part human, and I think they've been here from the beginning of time. I really believe they are just another group of people that have now lived in the wilderness for so long, and they've just adapted to their surroundings, and that's why they're covered in the fur. And I don't know. It's fascinating to hear everybody's different opinions on the subject.
It is.
And trying to formulate exactly what they are. I mean, my ultimate dream, of course, I'm crazy, but I would just love to see one in the wild. And I always picture myself just sitting down on the ground with my head bowed down as if I'm just telling them I'm safe. I'm here and I want to see you and I want one to talk to me. I want to hear talk to me.
Okay.
That's a picture in my mind. That's what I would love to happen.
Well, I mean, maybe it will happen. Who knows?
I don't know.
After what you've experienced, I wouldn't close the door on any possibilities.
Well, that's what Troy was saying. He said, now that this has happened, it may open the door to other things happening, whether good or bad. You don't know, but, I'm always kind of sad that we go out on these investigations and I never get to see one. Why can't I see one? I put myself out there all the time and I try to, I hope that I have a pure heart and all these different things. And you get sad and sometimes it's frustrating and you think, why am I doing this? I'm never going to see one. And then all of a sudden I see a little person and I'm like, okay, well, I guess it can just happen at any time. Maybe I was vulnerable that morning. I don't know.
I mean, I would say go out there, enjoy nature, enjoy, the people, your friends the friendships that you're forming.
Yep.
And quit looking for them. And
that's what I've been told.
Maybe you'll see one.
Yeah, that's what I've been told. It is. It's fun. And it's, like you said, it's a great bonding experience. I get to meet a lot of fun people from all over the place. And I love hearing everybody's stories, their emotions that they feel when they have seen one. That's what keeps me driven to keep doing what I'm doing.
One final thing.
Okay.
I gotta ask, you own an antique shop?
Yes.
Anything weird ever happen at the shop?
Well, I don't own it. I just help run it.
Okay.
Not in this shop, no.
Okay.
Yeah, not in this shop. But I've always wondered if anything has ever happened there, because above the shop is like old apartments. And what is so neat about them is it was like everybody had their own little space, but out in the middle was like a common room where they would hang out. So all these little doors would open up onto this common room. And it's almost untouched up there. I mean, it's falling apart, but I would love to just sit up there one night and just see what happens, because the building across from us is apparently haunted. So,
do you want to hear a crazy story?
Yes.
Nothing paranormal or supernatural.
Okay.
Just a little story for you. We're going to pretend. I mean, okay. Disclosure, complete disclosure here. Obviously, whenever I found out where you're from and everything, I got excited because my entire childhood is tied to that area. The girlfriend that moved into that house with me, her and her family are from Shoto.
Really?
Yeah. So like I'm telling you,
wow.
I got excited. So I may or may not have looked up the shop and where it's at and prior. Okay, so.
Well, one day this week, I can't remember what day it was, Friday maybe, I was eating my lunch at my desk in the shop, and I hear this voice say to me, "Have you had any more sightings?" And I looked up and I was like, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" And she said, "Well, you're the girl from that YouTube video, right?" And I said,
Wow.
"Yes, that's me." And so she was like, "I just think that's fascinating." She just happened to be going through YouTube and this video popped up and she thought, "Okay, that looks interesting." And she watched it, and she, in the video, I mentioned a store, but I don't think I mentioned the name. But she just came up to Pryor to go shopping, and she said she came through the front door and she was like, "Oh my goodness, that's that girl." But yeah, I have people. The word has gotten out. In fact, we did an investigation down by Fort Gibson not very long ago, because an older gentleman had come in the store, and he's in his 70s. And he came up to my desk and he goes, "Are you the Bigfoot lady?" And I said, "I guess so, yes." And he goes, "Well, I have some stories I need to tell you." And so he told me his stories, and we did an investigation down there.
That's so great. That's so awesome.
I know, it's so fun. So yeah, I get to meet people, and I get us some leads that we investigate every now and then. And it's just, I think people feel comfortable coming into the store to talk to me. One, because I'm a woman. I think people are just a little bit more relaxed with that.
Yes.
I'm just very normal and very relaxed, and they tell me what they tell me, and I don't push them. And if they want to leave me more information, that's great. And if they don't, well, that's great too. I'm just glad that they can feel relaxed enough to come let me know what they've seen. So,
well, again, not paranormal in any way, just kind of weird. Whenever I was a kid and we were going to the lake house every single weekend of my life and spending all summers there, I had other family members that also had places in the same little neighborhood. It was a trailer park for retirees, and a lot of us were weekenders.
right.
And I had an aunt and uncle who also had a trailer in this trailer park, and he was actually the judge of Tahlequah at the time. But,
oh my goodness! Wow.
But whenever he wasn't being a judge and he was just being my Uncle Bill, he was a hilarious guy, very down to earth, one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. One of my heroes for sure. But
right.
One of his favorite things to do in his pastime was dumpster dive. Well,
oh no.
Yeah. So to the best of my recollection, we were dumpster diving one evening in an alleyway that was possibly behind your shop or very close to it in proximity.
Oh my goodness. That's
and
funny.
We found in this dumpster a prosthetic leg.
Oh my goodness.
Like an entire leg. My uncle pulled a leg out of the dumpster.
That's fantastic.
And I just always, here it is, like, geez, I don't even want to think about how many years later, decades later, and I still just really want to know, where did that prosthetic leg come from? Who threw away a leg?
Joke.
That's just crazy.
Right.
Yeah. But you find the darndest things in dumpsters. He also, it wasn't there. It was actually in Tahlequah. He found a baby like an actual baby that unfortunately unfortunately a mother had abandoned her baby in a dumpster.
Oh my goodness.
And fortunately enough, he found it, and it was still alive.
Wow.
It was still in good health and everything. And, you know, he was a judge, so he knew where to take it and how to handle it. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Well, Tahlequah, you bring up Tahlequah, that's another whole area that's got a lot going on.
It sure does.
Yeah. Yes. There's not enough hours or days of the week to be able to go and see all these places that we need to be out and about investigating. It gets a little frustrating sometimes.
I mean, Tahlequah was on the news whenever I was a kid for Bigfoot stuff. There's a lady who saw one digging through the trash barrel out behind her home. And I asked my uncle about that. Before he passed away, I had already started Bigfooting.
Okay.
And he didn't make fun of me or anything. And so I asked him.
That's good.
Yeah, I asked him about that specific situation, you know, whenever it was on the news and everything. He said, well, I can tell you this. The deputy that investigated worked for me. He worked, you know, there in Tahlequah. And I talked to him about it, and he found tracks, footprints.
Wow.
And he said there's no way that lady was lying, and that there was definitely something out there.
That's awesome.
Well, Jodi, I appreciate you coming on here and exposing your life to the world.
Me.
Yeah.
No, it's great.
I'm so glad Evans connected us. Always down to talk to a fellow Okie, and wow, sharing something in common like this is.
I know.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And if you've had an encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. That's where you can find all the past episodes, links to merchandise where you can grab a t-shirt, and links to all the social media. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.